what you do. But I think what we start off with is basically, where you grew up and how you got involved eventually down the road is in Playwright.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I grew up in the North Shore of Massachusetts, not too far from Gloucester, where Tall Tales was set. And I lived there until college, went to college in Worcester, and mostly was writing poetry to start off and a little bit of fiction. And I was teaching math right out of college, and the guy that was running the drama program said, "Hey, you want to help out?" And I said, I like going to plays. Sure, why not? And almost immediately I realized, oh wait, this is what I should be doing. I should drop the poetry. I should drop the short stories and the novel, and I should be working on writing plays. And I've been doing that more or less ever since. I mean, I did teach, ran a high school theater program for a little over 30 years, and wrote a little bit during that time when I could, and have been writing pretty steadily since I retired about 5 years ago.
Nice. John, did you have as a kid, like growing up, did you have any background with like theater or like, or did you, and also on the other, I guess, the flip it, like the writing part of it, did you feel like, hey, like the writing is where you wanted to go?
Yeah, I mean, I did start writing. I know I wrote a short story that I think was mostly plagiarized in fifth grade. Just, read a good story, said I can write like that. Oh, why didn't I just write that? So I guess
Brings me back to my days in school.
Yeah.
Everybody has to start
Thankfully, I don't
somewhere.
need to discuss that again.
Right, right. So I was writing as far back as that. And it always felt like this is something that I want to be part of my life, but I just wasn't sure how it was going to work out.
Right, right. And then the acting part of it, did you ever have any like you know, interest in any of that? Like, I mean, movies and you said
Well,
plays, like
I mean, so very briefly, my one film role, uh, there was a guy, I was living in Worcester, and there was a guy who was making a movie that was going to be called Invasion of the Pie People. And the goal was it was going to be like a science fiction B movie, like, Plan 9 from Outer Space kind of thing. And he was shooting it with Roger Corman's equipment and his
oh
cinematographer,
wow.
the guy that did
Wow.
like the original Little Shop. Uh, and it was this crazy movie. It was the idea that aliens had come to Earth and were turning people into zombies by hitting them in the face with whipped cream pies. And my character played the head of an international center for wastewater treatment, Dr. Ross Ewage. And I discovered that carbonation was the way to solve it. So then you had to run around with seltzer and seltzer all the zombies and then come back to normal. Unfortunately, the movie before it wrapped filming, somebody broke into the guy's car and stole all the equipment and all the film.
Wow.
So
They didn't want you to put that movie out,
Yeah,
huh?
they don't.
nope, not at all, not at
They
all.
they stopped your like your
Yeah.
Academy Award, like,
That's the end of my
Yeah.
film career right there. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, my God, that would have been fantastic. I would have loved to
Yeah.
seen that pie and thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It was a lot of fun to work on.
Oh, I can
Um,
imagine.
but
I
and I
think a lot
did
of
some
people have been
acting.
attracted to it because it was pie too. They've been like, "Wow, I could see
Oh
pie
yeah,
people."
absolutely. Yeah. So I did some acting in graduate school and a little bit for a year or so after that, but then writing really became the focus for me.
Gotcha. But where'd you go to college and graduate school?
Undergrad, I went to Clark and got a double major in math and English, and then taught math for 3 years, and then went to Smith College for a master's in theater with a focus in playwriting, which
Oh
was very
wow.
confusing to most of the undergrads because they didn't know that the grad school was co-ed, so they could not figure out what was this guy doing here. So
Oh,
I saw that you went to school in the UK too.
yeah, I went for a year to the University of Sussex junior year abroad and did some philosophy, some English classes, some, it's weird to think about it now, but some artificial intelligence classes, more from the philosophy side than the computing side, but a little bit of computing side also. Yeah.
so it's funny. We were discussing about Gloucester. I had no idea that they had a stage play. I mean, there was I. This was news to me that when I reached out and we were talking through email, and I said, "My God, my brother didn't know that either." I think it's amazing because you hear North Shore Music Theater and other places, but I never knew Gloucester.
Right, right. North Shore was probably the first place, the music tent when it was the tent. The first place that I ever went to shows was there. But yeah, Gloucester Stage has been around since the late 70s, 79, I think it was founded, and it was originally at the Blackburn Tavern. because there wasn't a space. So folks would move in, they'd move tables and chairs out of the way and put on plays by Pinter and Beckett and, then move the tables and chairs back, have a drink and call it a night. So that was one of the ideas that the theater had, was to call the piece Tall Tales from Blackburn Tavern, to include that part of Gloucester history as well.
And what's the behind the Blackburn Tavern? Like, is there any historical thing other than the tavern part of it that like
Yeah, the one of the characters that I did not include in the play, but is probably deserves a play of his own, was the founder of the Blackburn Tavern, who was an amazing character. He I'm going to get all these details wrong because I read about him and did a little research and then said no, it's not going to be in this one. So my apologies for anybody in the Blackburn family who hears this the wrong way. But he, like for example, he got caught at sea during a storm. He was rowing and he ended up with severe frostbite and lost all of his fingers, but still maintained but this is what I'm going to do. So even after he had a long recuperation from that, he was still determined. I'm going to keep rowing boats, even though he didn't have fingers to grab onto the oars with. But he also founded the tavern.
Yeah, I don't think people realize. Well, I mean, we live in this area, but anyone else who's listening, that this area, it just goes back so far. I mean, in the New England area, the Massachusetts, so the history of everything, and you can only imagine the history that you can share about these. We just had someone on last week. He is was talking about a cemetery that was located in Haverhill that has soldiers that were fought in the Civil War. It was going back to 1859, which was very interesting. But I can imagine you can touch on a lot around Gloucester in that time frame with pirates and whatnot because of the history of the area.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the pieces that ended up as part of the play the stuff that once Gloucester became Gloucester. I think the earliest stories in the piece were around the 1630s. But they're indigenous folks that lived there for thousands of years. Some of those stories also made it into the piece.